Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Spideydude Experience and the Comic Binge.
Whoa! It's weird without any music, but that's fine. I can roll with that. So hi.
I can bring the music on.
Nah, that's okay. I had to create some music just for us at some point, but no, this is exciting. I mean, this has been a long time in the making, and I finally got off my lazy butt and said we need to do this for once. And because I feel with Dan Slott coming back and having a lot more, not even more prominence, but more limelight in Spider-Man's world than I was anticipating. Yeah. With the creation of Spider-Boy, it felt like the right time to do it because I feel like there's lots of controversy. There's still a lot of bad blood between the Slott Run and a lot of people, and Slott still likes to engage and get mad about stuff on social media, which again, it's his right. I'm not a slosh. Sorry, that's not an insult.
You're not a slosh player.
Yeah, you're not a Slott simp.
I'm a Slott fan. I don't want to, but I don't want to talk SH about people unless they do me wrong, which not a lot of people have.
Real quick, Paul, I kind of want to pick your brain on this. How do you feel about Superior coming back?
I mean,
I was going to get to that, Neil, after the intro.
All right.
I'm sorry.
I'll throw it to. Hey, hold on. Let me throw it to the other guy, and let's do it.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead, Zach. Go ahead.
So I'm Zach Joyner, webmaster of Spideydude.com and the executive producer of the Spideydude Radio Network. And to my right of me, my immediate right, is P Thug. He is the grand poobah of the Comic Binge YouTube channel, which we are simulcasting. Comics Binge YouTube channel. I can speak English. It's fine. And below me is is Adam. Hello, Adam.
Hey guys.
And to our producer here tonight, as always, is Mr. Neil Bogenreiter. Hello, Neil.
Hi.
So go ahead, Paul.
All right. So for today, first of all, please refer to the other two as Pizza Time or Pizza Time as Adam, and then also Tri-Skull down below me.
I forget.
Yeah, that's all right. All right. So Pizza Time and Tri-Skull. Tri-Skull's going to be just producing stuff. Pizza Time is going to be the orderly of our sweet Dan Slott discussion, where we will be discussing. We had originally wanted to call the debates. That was the original name that Zach came up with, but we both agreed that we don't want it to be like a knockout, drag out fight. We want these to be legitimate discussions because when we read these comics, and if you listen to the last show for the Spideydude Experience that I was on for a few minutes, we talked about how we both read these in different perspectives, and our perspectives are much different than we were, when they came out like 15 years ago, whenever the hell it was. And we both obviously, I liked it a lot more than Zach did. And Zach, has his reasons for not liking it. I have reasons for liking it, but we both agreed that we haven't read these in a long time.
So I have not read the She-Hulk issue in a long time. Because what we're covering tonight is going, and we're doing live because we want to just kind of use this as a way of announcing that we're doing this. The rest are going to be live to tape, basically. We'll make some minor edits and stuff like that if we go too long, but like we're trying to keep it within certain time frames, certain parameters. So tonight we're covering several issues. We're going to cover. Let me grab it. We got She-Hulk number 4. We got Spider-Man Human Torch mini 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I did the order wrong.
We're out of order, but
I'm sorry. I'm trying to produce, and
that's all right.
Doing my job for me.
No, I did that. So we are covering 6 issues tonight. We'll talk about each. Well, I did want to also mention like Slott's career a little bit with Spider-Man prior to. And so let me add those couple of overlays right quick because I just got those up. So, Paul, while I'm doing that, kind of tell people a little bit about like what we're kind of further elaborate what we're trying to do tonight.
Yeah, so tonight this is kind of our first introduction episode. Kind of, we're not going to do these live probably. maybe every once in a while, but at first, at least initially, we're going to just do recordings and post them both on the Spideydude Experience Network and also on YouTube channel and also on the Comic Binge channel. I think it was my good buddy, the Reverend, aka Chris Clow, who was doing his Batman Grant Morrison kind of like issue by issue breakdown, and I kind of thought might be a good time to kind of maybe get the Comic Binge kind of going with Spider-Man a little bit, who is like my all-time fictional character. So as we go here, we're gonna try to do, and again, we've talked about this before last time, but it's not going to be like hard. It's not always going to be maybe the same way we do things, but we're at first, we're going to allow things to evolve and grow, obviously, but we're going to start things off with kind of the smaller chunk of comic books run. So like this one, this is all the comics with Spider-Man, not including the Ren and Stimpy Cinnamon Toast Crunch Man episode or issue, whatever.
Yeah. So I'll go into Slott's history in a minute, but yeah, go ahead.
So we're not going to talk about those. We're going to talk about strictly his 616, like specific kind of Spider-Man stuff leading into Brand New Day when he took over after JMS and Joe Quesada and all that infamous One More Day arc. So we're not going to cover One More Day, but we are going to, but we have to probably talk a little bit about it because we can't talk about One More Day without, or Brand New Day without that, right? So the initial, the next episode you'll probably hear, or will hear, or should hear, will be the original Brand New Day issues that Dan Slott wrote. That had the first appearance of Mr. Negative, and then also the issues that afterwards that were with a paper doll drawn by the amazing Marcos Martin, which I am very excited to reread all these because it's been a while. I enjoyed all those issues, and just for the record, I am a Dan Slott fan of this stuff. So, well, either way, we're gonna start out there, and it's gonna do chunks in here. There, obviously, there's gonna be probably some like wiggle room here or there with certain episodes maybe, but we're going to try it out, see how it does. But I think we're going to try to do all the issues eventually, but those are the first I'd say first 2 episodes we're going to do. And they might be a little bit shorter. We'll see. Hopefully it'll be shorter because we want to do like 2 at a time when we record, but we'll see what happens. But either way, that's the format's going to be like right now, but we're not married to it. We're going to see evolve and grow. But yeah, I think this really is about re-examining, I think, a very, whether or not you hate it or love it, a very important run for Spider-Man history regardless. So yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting discussion nonetheless.
I don't disagree with any of that, what he just said. So to kind of get into Slott's history with the characters, particularly with Spider-Man, obviously he grew up a big Spider-Man fan. That's very well known if you've followed along with Slott's career. His first written story was in a very random spot. So in 95, they had, instead of doing annuals, they did super specials. And the 95 story was Planets of the Symbiotes. And they
got retconned now?
Yeah, it's been retconned like 4 or 5 times. So Planet of the Symbiotes, the Venom super special had a backup. Now this backup has never been reprinted to my knowledge.
Gasp.
It is never. It was a backup drawn by Mark Bagley, written by Dan Slott. It was talking about Jean DeWolf and the relationship with her and Spider-Man running around in the symbiote costume. And like, I guess Jean told Spider-Man how she felt, but Spider-Man was asleep the entire time. So it's taking place back then.
Oh, that's cool. See, Dan, man, he's an idea guy. Let's just say that he's definitely an idea guy.
Yeah, it takes place back in that continuity, in that time in continuity. Then his first full thing that he did with Spider-Man was Ren and Stimpy versus the Padre Toast Man. I don't know.
No, Cinnamon Toast Man.
Cinnamon Toast Man, whatever.
Powdered Toast Man.
Yeah, whatever.
Toast Man.
We're all wrong. Okay.
Yeah, so that was issue 6 of the Ren and Stimpy Show tie-in comic. And then before Brand New Day, he did Avengers Initiative number 7. Now I've got a bit of a story and backstory with that in terms of
Didn't he write the whole series?
He wrote up until Secret Invasion, and then Gage took over in Dark Reign.
Yes,
right. So Initiative, but wasn't Initiative. Right, Initiative was before. I always forget where Initiative is in conjunction.
Yeah,
so initiative is right after Civil War ends.
That's right.
Then it lasts up until Secret Invasion. Then gets a team rebranding during Dark Reign, and then ends after Siege.
So I totally forgot. Yeah, this was before. I always think it's the same time for some reason. So you're right. I forgot.
But yeah, that is that. So that was outside of what we're covering today. Prior to Brand New Day, that was Slott's like Spidey career. Right. So we're covering the She-Hulk comic. Now, She-Hulk was just was in the news recently because it was a heavy inspiration for the She-Hulk MCU show. So if you want to see what the direct inspiration was, it's this series, the one that came out in 2004, not the 2005 series. Go on, Paul.
Right. Yeah, and so he wrote. So after the or the Ren and Stimpy stuff, would She-Hulk be this first real established comic that he wrote? Then
I think that it was the Ren and Stimpy first, then the Planet of the Symbiotes in the Venom thing, and then She-Hulk. Yes.
Yeah. Then after She-Hulk, then it was Avengers Initiative.
Well, then it was technically the miniseries. It was She-Hulk, the miniseries, and then the Initiative.
Yeah, and then the Initiative. Okay. So I was out of comics by this point. And I missed this She-Hulk run. I didn't read it till later. But I remember hearing a lot about the series when I came back into comics, and She-Hulk felt like She-Hulk had made a comeback when I came back. And I think Dan Slott was the crux of that. And I remember seeing reading like Wizard magazine at the time because it was still active at this point. And they had a panel on this from this issue where Spider-Man reveals why he thinks J. Jonah Jameson hates him, and it's I was gonna ask you. I don't want to jump into it now, maybe, but it's kind of controversial, maybe now. I don't know. Like it's interesting. This whole run is interesting. To be honest,
it's
not to jump in, but I think Slott's humor ages very poorly. And there's a joke in the Initiative that aged very poorly in terms of sex change, and this is another joke that I think also aged a little poorly, but not as badly.
Yeah,
I would agree. I would agree. There's, in fact, already from and I think from this, my retrospective, there are things that you're probably right, Neil. Like, there's a lot of things that just don't age well. They don't sit as well as they did at the time.
Yeah.
And, and we've talked about that a lot with Slott stuff. And I think he's admitted that there's some things that he's made mistakes on. And and listen, like I'm not going to judge everyone for everything they did back in the past, especially if there's no malice behind it. Right. And we all know there wasn't malice then. We don't. It's malice now. I don't hold that against them, but it is interesting reading this, how I'm like, it's not as good. And I would say She-Hulk series in general, I remember when I reread it, there were a couple things that I was like, ooh, I don't know about this, but at the same time, comics back then in the early 2000s were still very much male driven. And
it was, I mean, you got to put things into context, and similar to what, we do with, when we're doing history stuff, like on Mayday Monday, or Make My Mayday. You've got to put things into the perspective of the time period of which is printed. This was Slott's first big break with She-Hulk.
Yeah.
And, making it a legal comedy. And you got to think, it's also around the time of Ally McBeal. I don't know if it was still on the air at the time, but it was like,
we need a fact check on this. McBeal was way before this.
Well,
it was afterwards. Do my producer thing. Jamie, look up Ally McBeal.
Okay, Neil. Yeah, you're Jamie now.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Tri-Skull.
Thanks, Tri-Skull. But that's So I mean, but I think it ended in 2004, if I recall.
It ended on May 20th. It ended on May 20th, 2002.
2002. Okay, so it's a couple years after.
Because I just looked it up as well.
So it's a couple of years removed from Ally McBeal, but like, that spirit was still there. That type of,
you're right.
That was during the time of Boston Legal, wasn't it? I think Boston Legal was out then.
Probably. I think that lasted longer, right?
It did last longer.
Yeah,
it was kind of like the spiritual successor to Ally McBeal. So you got a bit of that slight legal comedy theater, the absurd elements that are out there in pop culture.
Yeah.
And that's very reflective of this book. So,
Yeah.
all right, let's get into the book, I guess, because we've kind of just skirted around. So let's just jump.
So really quick, and I think I don't want to spend like a huge amount of time on each issue, like explaining what happens. Well, I'm just gonna just go out with it. The character Pug.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah,
like, we don't need recaps for this. I'm gonna, as the moderator, I say no recaps for this. Like it's,
thank you.
You know,
thank you.
It's
so. Here's what we will do.
It defeats the point of the debate.
Yeah. Well, so moving forward, check our socials.
I should say.
Our because like this one we didn't kind of give people a list. So moving forward, check our socials. We'll be sure to post it on YouTube as well, like the YouTube posts. We'll let everybody know, hey, these are the issues that we're covering, and we're not going to have recaps as a result. Yeah. And that way we just keep it in there. So
I know we're asking y'all to do homework, but it's easier not just for us, but it makes it easier to kind of make the transition into the discussion a bit smoother.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
So basically, the quickest way you can do this issue is basically Spider-Man. If you watch the She-Hulk show, the Pug character from the comic book wants to help Spider-Man take J. Jonah Jameson to court and win a legal battle for defamation of his character, which is a very interesting and a unique take, which hasn't been done before. And that's the thing I would say, Dan, and this is what I would say Dan Slott strives the most. And I think I won't get much for the most part, reasonable opposition from this, because I think that Slott is an idea guy. He has great ideas.
100%. A lot of people would agree with that. Yes.
Yeah. And I think this is a great example of that, even though there are some things that haven't aged well in it, which we'll get to in a second. But I do think this is a very solid issue. It's very fun. It's very well paced. And even from this, and we'll talk about this more as we get to the Human Torch mini series here in a second. He really strives on a lot of supporting characters, and that's one thing I think is very interesting about my experiences with reading Dan Slott comic books. And I'm not saying that that's like every writer, right? But it feels like some writers love to do like the inside narration. Dan Slott, I feels like, and this is a reminder of how much he likes to do these, a lot of different characters interacting with each other, and maybe that's a byproduct of the fact that he likes to do Marvel style. And those who don't know, Marvel style is when he gives the artist the script or his plot. And I'm not sure how fleshed out this is as plot, but the bare bones example is he tells the artist, here's what needs to happen in 22 pages. Artist gives it back to him, and he puts a dialogue in after the fact. So I'm not sure if he plots every page, whatever. And regardless,
that varies, because there's different people that have different ways of doing Marvel style.
So that's what he did for this. So I don't know what that's a byproduct of it, but it's an example of that. And I thought it's a strong issue. It's a strong issue. It really shows off of how good he's good at interacting and pacing when he has a lot of characters to go off of.
My thing about this issue is it's a very good She-Hulk story that stars Spider-Man.
Yeah.
It's not a Spider-Man story. It is a She-Hulk story that happens to have Spider-Man in it. I think the twist of Pug bringing Peter Parker in, and then suddenly Peter is going, "Oh no, I want to settle because I'm about to get hit with a bunch of money." The whole thing backfires on him. Now, there is a plot point that could easily solve that entire part of the dilemma, though. All Pete has to do is go into the office, take his mask off, and say, "I am Peter Parker." And then that solves that entire dilemma. But had you had this happen, it creates an entire issue with Spider-Man in terms of his dynamic. I mean, if he gets a $300 million check, that is no longer Spider-Man's no longer Spider-Man, and it's being done in a She-Hulk. Yeah, like that's a bit. So by going through the avenue of a She-Hulk story that stars Spider-Man, it's fun. The way that he uses continuity here, I think, is pretty well done. The callbacks, if you're a fan of Spider-Man and you're a big time fan of Spider-Man, he brings up a lot of continuity. Now, sometimes that comes across not in the most, it's not in the most organic of ways. Here, very organic. This is one of those stories where I feel like that most of the continuity nods and everything are very organic. I thought it was like you. I agree on this issue. This is a very well paced. The art style is very
stylized.
Yeah. For lack of a better term,
it's 2000s stylized, which is kind of this was the time of like Brian Hitch on Ultimates. This isn't like Joe Madureira where he's like so stylized you can make it into like a Saturday morning cartoon. This is more not Ren and it's weird. Like Zach even said, it's impossible to peg it.
I like it.
It's
I love it, honestly.
It's a very European, early 2000s European.
It's a very Band-Aid SNA art style. That's a good way of putting it. Zach.
But the art style never bothered me. It's more the designs. I think that's probably the worst I've ever seen Scorpion ever drawn. To be quite honest.
Yeah. It's not. The legal stuff is fine. Spidey is fine.
This Spider-Man's cool.
Everything in the courtroom is good. The Scorpion, though, the Scorpion's not good. It looks
because like Scorpion Ditko, with the way Ditko did the mask of Scorpion is so unique, where like it like sticks to his mouth, and then it exposes the eyes, and then people they're like, I think people get a little confused by that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit to Big Time. I think Slott recognized this problem back then, and he wrote the Spider Slayer story specifically so he could give Scorpion a new costume.
I forgot. I totally forgot he's in that.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute. Hey, that's good. Tri-Skull, can you throw up the page I sent you? The one page I sent for this issue.
Which one?
It's only the one for She-Hulk.
It should be right below the She-Hulk cover, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's the Human Torch one. Hang on.
It's whatever.
I'll keep going. I'll keep going.
Hey, it's in everything that was sent. Neil is already on the page. You just gotta.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, it's out of order from the.
That's
that's on me. Sorry.
Tri-Skull, you're good. So I want to say I want to give a really strength to the issue before I give a little bit of a criticism of what we talked about. I alluded to before, but before I get into that, I really liked this part, and this is the one thing I would say Slott, regardless of for me when I read Slott, he knows how to balance things. I think emotionally, and even though he is a little. I've met Slott a few times. He's a big goofball. I like that about him, and like I think there is that sense of like playfulness to him that I think gets lost online, and people want to attack that. And I think I think there's a good naturedness to him that like also becomes
to just dovetail off that point, Paul. When you interview him, he is jovial. He is bombastic. He is a fun interview.
Yeah,
and I think he's that way with the fans. It's just that there is a element with him that comes across as very thin-skinned, and he gets very defensive.
Yeah,
Twitter brings out the worst of everybody, and Slott's no exception.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, we just had that happen with Pat Gleason today. People were trying to take him just sending out an image of like what he's doing, what progress he's working on, and going from there. So
it's sad, and the thing is, it sucks. Is like part of it. Maybe it's because it's a surprise that people would go after that hard, but people, for me, people have never changed. Being in school, people bully me and stuff like that. Like it's really is about other people wanting to get that reaction from you, and it is about reaction. I strive off of people getting people reactions from people. Anyone who knows me well knows I love to do this.
You like to poke.
I love poke.
High school is unfortunately indicative of the rest of the American experience.
It is, and so I know we're talking about the comics here, but I just want to say I think that's kind of the problem. Some people can deal with that better than others, and And again, I don't really follow Slott on Twitter. I don't follow. Be honest, I don't follow a lot of people I love on over their comics on Twitter because it's frankly I just don't really want everyone's stuff on them on my thing. It's weird.
I'm social. You need to log off.
Yeah. So, but I just want to say that I do think this is a great example of his strength as a writer. That I love that he is, Spider-Man is talking to the J. Jonah's lawyer here, and it's a great layout. And the artist did a great job of laying out and doing the close-ups, the wide shot close-up, and then the close-up right before the last panel, and then a wide shot at the end. And just and Slott, knowing how comics work so well, knows how to bring that narratively in the dialogue. Again, he's doing his Marvel styles, he's doing it all after the fact, bring this all home on this one page. This is beautiful. This really sums it up to like J. Jonah side, right? Like I thought that was really well done. And it shows you a strength as a writer, and I think and more importantly, a strength as a comic writer. So I thought this was a great moment my favorite moment in the book, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's one of I think the twist of bringing Peter on. He's like, oh, it's deja vu, and he's like, what? Like the humor in this issue was really well done. I felt like the humor of like the fight with She-Hulk and Spidey fighting the Scorpion, I thought was really like, Peter's like, hey, you managed to talk down a supervillain and we ended a fight by talking, Right. I thought that was really well done. I think this was an issue that got a lot of people going, man, I think he might be able to write Spider-Man. And it's very clear to see why. As a guest star in a She-Hulk book, he did really well. And I think that has to be said. I think this was.
And also, I remember he has Peter talking to Mary Jane. And
yeah.
So, so it's not like.
No, until it's the shapeshifter.
Right. But even before that, like in the first beginning of the page, she's there and he's talking and so you see he understands like the mythos, if you will, or at the time, which is
they're married,
Yeah. But and just really quickly to wrap, I think it's a really fun issue. The comment, and I'll just say it right there if you want to I don't want people to offend people, but like when Spider-Man talks about, I'm I ask him, why do you think J. Jonah hates you? And he's because it's maybe because I'm black, and I'm like,
everyone's like, gasp.
I know,
he's like, I didn't know. Some of my best friends. The thing is, though, if I may interject, it's
the Twitter courtroom. It's the Twitter courtroom.
That I feel like, I don't know, that moment to me still kind of works. I feel like that's like there are worse things in older comics.
There is. I just think it just hasn't aged as well as I wanted it to. That's all.
But at the same time, too, I see Peter saying that to get a rise out of Jonah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
put him on the spot.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah.
Because he knows that Jonah is going to sit there and twist himself into a knot to try to worm his way out of it, and. It's also one of those things. I think I view it as a way of Slott trying to break the tension of this very serious matter with Peter's humor. And, this is supposed to be a dramedy. Like the book is supposed to be a dramedy. So you got to kind of look at it from that standpoint too.
I will say, I think that the humor it's not Slott's fault it aged poorly. Back in 2004, there wasn't this whole identity, this whole examination of identity in the American conscience.
Yes.
And so the humor hasn't aged well, but it's not because of Slott. I think that, that kind of joke was fine in 2004. And
we've evolved of people since then. And I think that's,
even 5 years ago, that joke. And you know what's funny? I guarantee you, if you bring that to a black person, they're going to laugh.
It depends on who you ask.
I will say.
But there's going to be a segment of people that are going to laugh at it regardless of their skin color. And I think that even there are some in the African American community they're going to go, oh, because they like Spider-Man, and
he did a haha.
Yeah, he did
a
haha.
Also, and people still say, oh, I'm not blank. Some of my best friends are blank. So.
Right. Right. So, which is again Jonah twisting himself into knots is what Jonah would do. So,
it wasn't like a deal breaker for me. It just was like it's just I just feel like right now in the social way the social conscious is, and again I think we are better people. Right. Of overall of being respectful, more of those kinds of things. And because again, I don't want to say everything should be off limits either, but I think there should be like some time to let things kind of heal. Maybe I don't know. I'm just saying. But in retrospect, it's like it feels different now compared to back then.
So what you're saying is it took you out of the story when you're reading this.
That's a great point.
To me, it wasn't as egregious as the joke Peter made about the Vulturians in Avengers: The Initiative.
Right.
Where Peter goes, "Oh, guess one of the Vulturians got a sex change." Right. Where that topic's taken a bit more seriously these days. So
right.
Oh, Dan.
Yeah. Well, again,
we're more flippant about stuff like that.
Yeah. So I think we could. So I think we all. So me and Zach both agree that it is.
There's going to be probably more agreeing on this episode, this inaugural episode, because this is some stuff I like.
I just want to point out that these issues we're talking about are like almost 20 years old.
That's crazy.
If someone can provide me with a history lesson, this is just before New Avengers, right? I think Disassembled hadn't happened yet.
Yeah,
Disassembled does not happen.
Because Disassembled was 2005, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, that timeline moves fast. Jesus Christ.
2006, man. Yeah. All right, so we'll move on to Spider-Man and the Human Torch series, which I would probably say it sounds like I remember when this happened, or when Dan Slott was announced as a part of the team. I want to say this was probably the catalyst, like helped him get on to the main series. I know Avengers Initiative helped him too.
No, this was certainly this. Okay, so the reaction to this mini series was overwhelmingly positive. I recall. Especially online, especially like, because even if you go back to the very earliest days of Crawl Space's podcast, when I was on there, me and JR both, and Brad, all three, felt like because of this miniseries that Dan could get the voice of Spider-Man right. Because at that point, we didn't know, like at that point, you're in the, we just got done, I think, with the, we just got done with the Totem story with JMS, and then we're moving on to Since Past. Since Past hits the splatter hits the fan, and this was kind of like such a palate cleanser to that for a lot of people, especially with Templeton's artwork. Slott and Templeton, I think, are like peanut butter and jelly. They work well together. But
didn't they do something recently, or am I misremembering?
I think they did. I think they did an issue of Fantastic Four, I believe.
Because I know Ty Templeton's been mainly working on Batman stuff, but I wasn't sure if he'd done something with Slott recently.
So we want to talk about these individually because they're 5 stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can just again. I don't want to break down each one. We can just talk. I think we should talk about this maybe as a whole more, and then talk about maybe some of our favorite issues of the 5, and maybe because I think because to me this is a great example of what Slott does. Because Slott, I think, I don't know. It does look at things more broadly from like not just like every like breakdown every single issue. Like any writer is going to have like, to me, in my opinion, is going to have, bits and pieces here that are going to be critiqued. Sure. But as a whole, I think it should be more of like a broad, in general, that we do this whole show, it's more broadly, just kind of because I think, I can nitpick. We could all nitpick or positive pick, if you will, certain things we loved or liked. But I think we should emphasize the things that like we liked it, if we liked it overall, and then what the ones we liked the most, we did, and moments we maybe didn't like or whatever. So
I think I think Paul's right. Brevity is going to be the soul of Whittier.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So just before we get into like talk about, I'll give my right brief history. I have not ever read this before until we read this. I was out of comics, so I was out of comics from basically from the late 90s, like 97, 98 is when I got out of it. So right when Peter Parker got back into Spider-Man, I pretty much got out. fully, because I got really into punk rock and playing music, and I just had no money or time. And comics, frankly, in the late 90s were not great. It just was not great.
See, I love that era before the reboot, before Mackie Byrne took over. Like there
were some fun issues. I liked some of it. The problem was I just didn't have the time or money and the resources.
Oh, it was an investment. I mean, back then you had to get 4 issues. I mean, it was essentially a weekly book. 4 issues a month.
Yeah.
So
I jumped out, got back into comics because I was working at a call center and wanted like comics to read while I was waiting for calls or whatever, just a BS. And I started picking up trades. And I remember I got back into JMS, the Totem Spider-Man stuff, which by the way, I love. And I told myself, okay, because I knew myself. I picked up some trades, along the way for a couple of years, like, okay, so this is about 2003, 2004. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to pick up trades. Trades are fun because I don't want to get into single issues. And sure enough, one day of picking up trades, what do I see? A New Avengers issue #1. Or no, the first trade. I went, is Spider-Man in the Avengers? And the comic guy I was going to at the time was like, yeah. I was like, and then I said, well, how many issues are there? Well, this is the first trade, and I have the other 2 that are right over there. So I'm like, so basically it just started? Yeah. I'm like, and I was like, well, all right, I'll only buy Spider-Man and New Avengers, and the rest is history. So, so anyway, I missed all of that. I remember I got on the crawl space. I had found it a year later, not too far afterwards. And I remember people talk when Dan Slott's name got brought up. You guys talked. I remember, not every word from detail, obviously, but I remember you talking about this miniseries. And I always meant to go read it, but I never got back to reading it until now for this. So which by the way, really quickly, I have this digest version because I thought I was buying the regular version, and this came, and I was like, man, I found this Spider-Man Human Torch thing for a steal. It's like $5. I'm like, hell yeah! And I look at this, I'm like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, oh, digest, and then really quickly, I'll throw it to you here in a sec. I said, well, I read comics physically mainly now, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to read this goddamn digest and like it. This is not fun to read. And so then I topped that, and then I went to digital. So,
so here's the thing.
No, last thing. The reason why, and this is why I think manga does better like this than American comics, because if you guys can notice here, look how small these panels are, and these words are. Yeah. Like, it is hard, homie. I don't care if you have great eyes. This is not easy.
I have a hard time reading paper. I have a hard time reading the 6.25 by 10s.
Yeah. So anyway, I read them. Zach, why don't you go and lead us into what your thoughts?
So that digest program that was among the few that, and then they had Spider-Man, Marvel Age Spider-Man. Those were included with the trade paper that digest format for Scholastic. So those are designed for kids. Those are designed for kids, teens, and young adults.
Dude, that's how you get kids to not read, is by giving them those things.
No. But and not because it's not good, but because it's so hard to read.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. They had to. If you read the digests and you read the physical copies, almost all of them, Dave Sharp had to go in and redo all the dialogue to make it fit that format.
Look at this. Look how small this is.
That makes sense because the Spider-Girl ones are re-lettered, right?
Manga's just like 20 splash pages per chapter. So
yeah, but
well, it's not all splash pages.
No, but there is just again. We're actually on the series now, but I think that shows that you write for the medium you are, and manga gets what it is in this format. And it's just like it's just interesting. So yeah. I don't recommend reading American comics in digest format.
Paul, you're onto something, because my nephew, my step nephew, he's just getting into kind of reading comics, and he loves My Hero Academia. And I think if it was styled like American Digest, he would hate them so much.
Well, there you go. Yeah. Well, some people got into comics via the digest, but that's just
No, that's cool, but as a mainstream form, this is not welcoming by any means.
No, it's probably not. All right, so
maybe
book
not as
fairs.
welcoming for adults, because these, again, children, and they are smaller people.
Children are not going to be able to read this. Still, this is not fun to read this small.
I don't know.
It's a smaller person.
I've given Gabby.
The Scholastic Book Fair and its consequences.
There's a height and size ratio to consider.
I was going to say, like,
all right.
Look, females also like that type of format because it's something that they can throw in their purse.
Sound like a Ferengi from Star Trek. Females like the digest.
Okay, Adam. Time.
Further emphasizes
Time.
Gavel.
Cole, you're getting muted. All right. Anyway, so my point being that this was very much an all ages Spider-Man story, and it goes through Spider-Man's history really well. I think Templeton's artwork, he tried to alter it slightly for each period, and it's really, really well done. The way that we get the interactions with
let's throw up the covers while we're talking here.
Yeah, throw up some covers.
Thank you.
So we got the cover of issue 1 here. This takes place in the 60s, right around the time of Marvel team. Yeah,
60. Let's just say takes place early in their careers.
Early in the career, yeah.
The life story before life story.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like the first couple years or so. Like
this is like
it's like the Ditko run. This is the Ditko run of Spider-Man.
There you go.
When this takes place.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's like during the Ditko run, but before Marvel Team Up #1. So that, so it's a fun little jaunt. There is a little narrative thread that's formed here there's a bit of twinge of jealousy that Johnny has for Peter.
But Zach, I want to know, because I don't want to break down every issue. Like, I want to know, like, overall, does Dan Slott through these 5 issues, how does it make? Because how do you perceive this? Because you said you loved like Dan Slott's writing in this series, and you said that for a long time.
What I liked about it was that he got Spider-Man's voice right, especially for the specific time periods that he covers. And I also felt like that in terms of the conclusion of the story, I felt like was a very logical choice. To me, the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man, that relationship is different than Daredevil and Spider-Man.
Oh,
like that.
Let me cut you off really quickly. And Pete's time, you can tell me shut the hell up. You're the boss. But like, I just think that there is an overrated. People overrate the relationship between Spider-Man and Peter Parker, or Spider-Man and Daredevil completely.
Oh no, I disagree with that. I disagree with that because I like especially when Peter David wrote him, especially the stuff like there's an issue of Daredevil where Ben Reilly shows up that I really did enjoy how they integrated with each other. I think him learning his identity made sense. I like the Sin Eater story. So, is it as peanut butter and jelly as the Fantastic Four relationship? No, it's just different. The problem is
different, but it's like hold on, really quick. It's time if we're doing too much of a divergence. I apologize, but
it's all right.
Last thing I'm going to say about
this is fine.
This is what I'm going to say about Spider-Man and Daredevil, and I'm going to leave it here, okay? Because I want to talk about Spider-Man and Human Torch, but I just want to say, in my opinion. It goes, I would say Fantastic Four and Spider-Man are like right here, like at the top of like their relationship and how important that is to Peter Parker and Spider-Man. Daredevil is like down here.
Well, that's because in the last few recent years with Daredevil not knowing Peter's identity, that completely shatters a lot of the relationship that was built.
I would put so many people above Daredevil to Fantastic Four. That's all I'm saying. So,
well, I mean, Fantastic Four, I rated the very top.
Well, so, I know, but I would say Daredevil's at the very bottom almost.
No,
if anything,
can I toss in my hat in the ring real quick?
Sure.
I think that Daredevil is lower on Peter's end, but Spider-Man is high on Daredevil's end.
That
okay,
you may have hit the nail on the head on that one.
Yeah, because out of everybody, Pete is the only character that understands what Daredevil's plight is because of their shared villains, because of the fact that they're more street level vigilantes. I'm not saying that they're that the relationship is great with Peter and Matt. It's Spider-Man and Daredevil. That's different. That happened.
Okay.
So
if anything, to segue back in, if anything, this miniseries shows the importance of the Fantastic Four to Spider-Man.
Thank you. Yeah,
Spider-Man and Fantastic Four become genuinely become a family here, and it's always been like a somewhat implied thing. There's a respect there that Reed has for Spider-Man. That Sue, there's that Until Tales annual where Pete takes Sue out.
That's so good.
Which I think was drawn by Ty Templeton, by the way.
No, that's all red. That's all red.
Okay. Yeah, but that's a fun story.
That's one of my favorite Spider-Man issues ever.
So like it was a lot of like that type of thing. You're like, okay, and then you got this little sibling rivalry type thing with.
Can we rotate the covers too, guys? Really quick.
Yes, I'll take care of that. I'll take it. Zach, focus on the debate. Or the discussion. I will focus on the covers.
Okay. So like, and I like how each cover also reflects, because like this is a little bit later, but before Gwen dies.
So this is like, the Romita run, essentially.
This is definitely
this is like early-ish, like
this is Betty and Veronica, MJ, Gwen era, which I know you're going to have some things to talk about.
Oh yeah.
But that's definitely highlighted here.
Yeah, this is like the heart of that, like late 60s, pre-George Stacy's death.
Yeah.
This is straight up.
This is straight up. I love the ending of this issue.
Can anyone tell me who the colorist is? It's not Hollowell, but it reminds me of someone with that palette.
Nelson. I think Nelson's the colorist.
Okay.
But yeah, the color, like the end of this issue, you've got the spider buggy, him doing donuts on the freaking side of the Daily Bugle, which was hilarious.
That's great.
The humor is great. This is where I felt like he gets the humor, because if it's not being sophomoric, which is a criticism I have for him later, here it's just, it's fun when it's not the pressure. Here's my thing about Slott. When he's not under the pressure of having to write the Amazing Spider-Man, I feel like he's more loose in his writing style. That's what's reflected here in this book.
Man, it's so funny because like I totally, again, it's been a while since I've read his comics, Amazing Spider-Man run, but I don't see much of a difference between this than what as far as to me narratively or not narratively, characterization wise from Spider-Man for the most part. Again, it's been a while, maybe I'll change my mind, but this just feels all in line to what I read as Spider-Man for Peter Parker.
I do think there is a parallel between, just from what I barely remember, but if that's good or bad, it probably depends.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought reading this for the first time ever was interesting because I didn't love it, but I liked it. Right? Like I don't think, like when I read this, I'm not like, this is grade A Spider-Man. Get this man on 500 issues. Like I'm not. Sure, I would not read this now and say, "Oh yeah, this guy's got it." He's.
But you've also got to. We got to bring it back to the context of when this is being published too. This is 05.
Well, I understand. Yeah.
So we're getting all this like super dense, dark, and right. I don't dislike the overall.
JMS was not that dark. In my opinion,
this around the other, or like right before?
No, other was 2006, I think, during New Event.
It got darker though when Deodato came aboard. In general, I felt like it wasn't as dark.
But he was on it that well. I guess he was on it well. Actually,
I think also the context of when this book came out, Spider-Man was very metaphysics heavy, as in like it examined the character a lot.
Yes,
and they usually did it, and I don't want to say in a grimmer lens.
No, I know what you mean.
But this is a much more lighthearted examination of Spider-Man as a character compared to its contemporaries.
This is like something published in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as opposed to the 90s and beyond.
But again, I know what you're saying, but it's not like that eras. And even though like they kind of went that route a little bit, it's supposed to be earlier in that part of their careers as superheroes, right?
Yes.
I think Neil, you bring up a great point that at the time, because I love the JMS run, and we reviewed it for the Comic Binge, the Spider-Man Council, and I've talked about how like it's Baby Bear for me. I always love using my Baby Bear analogy. It's just right. It's just a light enough. It's just dark enough. It's not like it can kind of go either direction. Yeah. This is obviously more lighthearted, and that's not bad. It's just that I would not read, and that's the thing with Spider-Man. That to me is what's critical as a writer, and this is all our preferences as what we project on ourselves, which is not. And again, I talk about projection a lot. I don't think it's a bad thing, because you can only love and like things that the way you like. So of course you project yourself onto something. It's just way in reality, you know.
Right. I think it also doesn't help that Spider-Man was very introspective this era, as far as kind of looking back on like you had what was it, issue 500, the look back on Spider-Man as a concept.
Yes.
And I think this book is sort of the
opposite.
The happier cousin that's not as somber.
There is some depth throughout these 5 issues.
No, for sure.
Because like Zach said, there's the irony plot point that comes, that starts in issue 1 and it ends in 5, and it honestly leads into a pretty like both of their understandings of each other. The irony of that comes back around, and then it honestly leads into a pretty heartwarming ending.
The ending I think is utterly fabulous. That's probably my favorite of the issues, because you get to see like it one of the best things about like JMS's run, like issue 50, right? Where MJ's like, you never bring me to work. You never introduce me to your work friends. And then there's Captain America. And this is kind of an extension of that, where it's like you get to bring in Aunt May and MJ, and it envelops that part of his world that he could never share prior to. And it took all these adventures and all this trust that's built up, and it's highlighted throughout this entire miniseries, to when you get to the end of the miniseries, you're like, oh yeah, really, they are like family.
I will also say, I'm skipping ahead a little bit in my thought process on this, but I think Slott has a problem going forward of kind of sticking the landing of his stories. This story, to me, especially issue 5, which I'll pull up right now, feels very much like Slott. Bam! Simone Biles the landing.
He honestly, and there's a criticism of most writers these days in nailing the end of a miniseries like this. This is one of those cases.
Or just a story arc.
As a story, it did a great job of nailing the ending and going, okay, I want more between Spidey and the Human Torch. I want this. I want more interactions with the Fantastic Four, which led to a lot of disappointment, in my opinion, whenever the Fantastic Four suddenly don't know his identity after nailing this so well. Then Slott has to go back and try to fix that, and it just was an inferior story.
But that to me is just a byproduct of the era that it was in.
Well, it's editorial's fault. That's not Slott's fault.
It's exactly. So I don't think, but at the same time, I would say these comics they're fun, and I'm not saying this is bad. It's just interesting, and when I read it, I'm not like, oh, we have to give this guy a Spider-Man. I'm like, oh yeah, he'd be interesting. I would never predicted that he'd go on to be who he was on this arc, which again, I'm the one who likes Dan Slott the most probably here, which is, it's funny me saying that. So, but I did really like this. There are a couple things, and it's not really, this is a Slott thing. It's more of like, I talked about with you guys on our text chain, how I think that the weird thing is that making MJ and Gwen friends it's always so obnoxious to me. And that's, a little bit of a problem. I do have a little bit, again, there is a little bit of retroactively like kind of cringy moments in here that I want to take some criticisms out of the way first really quick. But there's a part, I'm not sure if I said
so that's why you chose those sexy pages.
I did. Yes. Thank you. So there's the page. Did I send you guys the page of Felicia in her underwear?
Yes.
So put that up for me.
And She-Hulk in the maid costume.
Yeah. There are two elements here it feels, and you guys talked about with this whole Silk thing, which that's weird. I don't want to bring that up now. I'm just going to mention that as a
that's the worst, I would say.
Okay, that's not now. Listen, I'm not. Adam, I want you to really.
I know.
Please do not.
I think we'll have words about this when we get to.
Yes, when we get to that. But that's not right now.
Continue, Paul. Continue.
Thank you. So I bring this up not because I want to be sexy, but I want to point out that this pretty much shows again that it's overly sexualized for males, and it's just. And listen, I'm not saying it's bad for people who want to be sexualized themselves. I'm not saying that at all. But the problem is, it's just like an overemphasis. This whole issue specifically is just like Johnny trying to get his kicks on and get laid by either She-Hulk or Felicia.
It is abnormally a horny issue that
it's just a little much. And even like, and I know like this really bothered me. I'll be honest. This legitimately bothered me. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, I have to go back and sit back a little bit and say, okay, Johnny Storm is like a very, attractive celebrity. He's used to getting what he wants. So She-Hulk is a very attractive woman. And he's just, I put myself in that situation and I'm like, maybe I would do, whatever. But it just seems weird when it's like right off the bat, like, oh, She-Hulk, like you're in a maid costume. So we should just stay here. Yeah, I'm like, oh, when I read that, I was like, oh man, that's rough.
I gotta give Jen credit in that scene because once she realizes, what am I wearing? I would never wear this as Jen Walters, but I feel different when I'm She-Hulk, which was something that was really explored during Byrne's She-Hulk.
No, and Slott like brought all that is, and I think that's a fair thing to say. That being said, it's just
it's very horny.
Awkward. It's too much. And to get, it's basically there to get Johnny horny enough to work with Felicia. And it's just kind of awkward. It's just awkward. Like, and then Felicia's like, oh, I have to get in my underwear to be able to get into pick this lock. It's like, God damn, like, why are we doing this, guys? Yeah, it's
that's
again,
very early 2000s.
It's very early 2000s, and it's very indicative of how a lot of people in Marvel, especially in the 2000s, from really this period all the way through, including into Brand New Day, viewed Felicia as nothing but pure sex.
Not just Felicia, but a lot of women.
Well, no. If you look to broaden our horizon, like if you look at the way like Brian Michael Bendis openly lusts after Katie Pryde, or or like the way Jim Lee draws Psylocke,
or Jessica Jones.
That's different.
Well, that's
an examination of the character rather than just like.
Are you getting a rectum exam with Luke Cage in the first?
Oh my God!
Hang on,
Adam, please.
But what I'm saying is that, but like if you look at the way Jim Lee draws Psylocke, or
okay, that's fair.
They view these characters primarily as sex objects or things that drive the male ego primarily, and then as characters as sort of a bonus feature.
Right.
Yeah.
It's very much that edgy, like the 2-year gap from like the Y2K. That's when the trend really took off, I think.
That was very much a Jameis thing because he was trying to get people to buy comics,
right?
And very much.
Well, to bring it to your point, this is before Disney bought them, and I'm not sure if he was still in charge at this point. But this is
Jameis had left. He left.
This was after Quesada took over.
Quesada takes over and kind of kept the status quo for the most part.
He did, because I'll never forget when I was dating my wife. I had a bunch of comics, and I think I had like a bunch of Civil War tie-in issues, and Miss Marvel was one of them, the Carol Danvers Miss Marvel. And she was in like her old school, which I grew up on that costume, which I have a fondness for, not because I'm horny, but like because I'm actually like the costume, but it's attractive. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's sexy, but I mean, it's
I would like to have a Marvel Legend of the swimsuit.
Yeah. But the picture, if you guys know what, I wish I should have brought it up.
Is this the Frank Cho cover?
it's like issue like it's in that
See, Zach?
Well, no, it's in the
It's Frank Cho, so I'm not surprised.
It's a Civil War 2005. She's like fighting the Brood, but it's later on. It's like the Initiative or whatever. It's like one of those issues.
I think I know which one you're talking about. Yeah.
But like anyway, I was looking at it, and my father-in-law, my future father-in-law, goes, "Look at that! That girl's got huge boobs, which is ridiculous." And but guys, in all seriousness, it was like it really opened my eyes. I'm like, and like he probably thinks that's why I bought it. But it wasn't the reason at all.
Right,
no.
yeah.
It's cheaper than a Playboy. Give him that.
Well, I was told, yeah. But
Playboy was pretty cheap back then.
But I was buying it because I was the Initiative. But I realized I'm like, shit. Like people think like when they look at my comics and they see this Miss Marvel character with huge, gigantic breasts that are unreasonable for like any woman at that point fighting. It's like, I was like, damn.
Yeah, it's one of those things when you look at like. Especially how comic shops were too at the time.
Yeah,
like
dude, the 90s, Lady Death.
The 90s. I mean, everything was in your face, and it was just.
Which again, cheese like cheesecake stuff. Like I don't want to dismiss people who generally like whatever, right? Like I'm not.
Listen,
I don't want to. I don't want to diminish it, but I do want to say when you're it's a difference for the type of audience you want to attract. If you want to attract all ages people, you don't need to put out this like ridiculous like stuff like that.
No, to bring it back to like our romantic relationships. When I introduced my then girlfriend to comics back in college, I introduced her to Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel. I don't think I could have gotten her to go near a comic book if it looked like the cover for Mighty Avengers #1, where or the end where where Ultron Jan is naked and standing over Sentry's wife. I could never have gotten her to go near that. It was a very hostile environment for a female comic fan, especially in that immediate era.
And that, especially that's what also, I mean, to bring it back to our network for a second, that's what made people like Spider-Girl so much, is that she was the opposite of that. Even though there was a bit of an exaggeration of how Ron was drawing, particularly he was trying to jump off of what Pat was doing, and he was trying to make it a little more animated. But by doing so, it was he literally jokes and says there was some of those covers where she just needed to eat a sandwich because she was real thin. So even the artists kind of understand that when you get to Amazing, it's very much a toned down. She's built like a gymnast.
Yeah.
So
and so back to these issues. If you put up issue 5 for me, please, Try School.
The cover.
Yeah, please. I just want to say, or 4, I'm sorry, issue 4. I apologize. I always think it's 6 issues. Thank you. This is probably my least favorite issue, even though it's my favorite era of Spider-Man, maybe, which is really hard for me to say because it was just this felt too over the top. Because I love the Byrne Fantastic Four. I love Felicia. I love Black Cat. I have no problem with her being overly sexualized or how. No, that's not what. Let me take it back. I don't mind her being a very sexualized character. That's who she is as a character, and that's fine. The problem is that that's all they think they can do with her, and it sucks.
Yeah.
And
if you look at like Jed McKay, who has basically defined the modern
a
character who is confident in her sexuality but is not sexualized for the pleasure of the reader.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And it felt, and again, this is it's not just Slott. This is a lot of people. And I think maybe, again, he probably would I don't know, maybe he would say, yeah, you're right. I don't know. But either way, I still enjoyed the issue. I don't, and I think this is a thing for this whole, these are fun issues to read, but I don't always need I don't know, the Human Torch Spider-Man relationship. I will say, maybe this is why I don't love it. It just kind of wears on me for a while. And reading it 5 issues in a row, with the exception of issue 5 being fantastic. And I always wanted to know when I got back into comics, how did Human Torch know who he was for a little bit? Like, I was like, what? I'm like, oh, okay. And I love it. And if you want to throw up those 3 panels, Try School that I brought up, I do think that this moment is really, really awesome. Not that one. Yeah, I'll go to that one in a minute.
Is it? Oh, there we go.
Sorry.
Sorry. I'm seeing through all of these.
But this is great because this does the fact that he built up to this moment was really well done. And I do think he sticks more landings, in my opinion, than most people. I'll throw it to you here in a second, Zach.
Yeah.
But I do say that this made me go, I love this. And I love MJ and him going like, yep. And he's like, ugh. Like he's so like, let's be honest, anyone smarter might be able to put Peter and Spider-Man being like to get like actually the same person together a lot faster. Makes a lot of sense that Johnny's that dumb to not get it really. And it makes more sense. And I thought that Slott did a great job building up to this moment of this reveal.
I do think that I kind of wanted to mention it earlier, but I think that this book goes a long way to inform Peter and Johnny's relationship throughout Slott's run. I think he kind of abandons it after Parker Industries, but up until the Future Foundation stuff in issue 557, I believe.
Yeah.
This is sort of the beginning of an accidental meta arc in Slott's run that focuses on the Peter and Johnny friendship that eventually culminates in Johnny offering Peter his place on the Future Foundation.
Yeah, which by the way felt very awkward at the time when I read that, and I'm being like, that doesn't make sense. Now after reading this, makes a lot more sense in conjunction of like understand, because I knew Spider-Man and Fantastic Four were always like, you know, somewhat
pretty close.
They were close, but they weren't like best friends necessarily. They weren't like a family. I would say
they're like rivals. That was what Ditko. That was Ditko's intent, was that they were rivals essentially. Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly.
But when you read this book, this kind of accent. I don't want to say it's accidental because I say it's accidental as in like I don't think Slott intended for it to end the way it did. But I think this is the beginning of an unplanned meta arc that culminates in issue 557.
Yeah, this is where totally like. I think I like that issue because of this miniseries, and it really felt like the spiritual successor to this miniseries and this particular issue. I like how he wrote Peter and MJ together in this issue. I like how he utilized the teaching aspect of Peter in this issue. I liked how he did the thing with the status quo. And this is where I felt like, okay, if we're going to have somebody replace JMS and take the baton that JMS puts forth of Peter being a teacher and things like that, I think Slott can do that. The problem was that's not the baton that Slott's handed, which is not Slott's fault. That's editorial's fault. But like, this is where I think a lot of us felt like, man, this is really like an exceptional way of bringing two characters that started off as antagonists in the early 60s and have now evolved into being this very an extended part of the FF. And especially when you read like the 90s stuff where you add Scott and Jen and Elijah and all that, where the FF start to expand their family beyond the core four. Like Peter being a part of that really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and this is what I would say. Like I enjoyed this. I didn't love it as much as you guys did probably back in the day, but I did enjoy it. I don't think it's the best thing in the world, but you know, of Spider-Man I've ever read. It's definitely not my favorite, even close to what Dan Slott's done on Spider-Man. But again, I still liked it. And despite issue 4 being not my favorite of which for a while there, I was steaming when I was reading it for the way the characterization of Felicia, until the very end. I went, okay, Dan, you got me. So
like, why is she stealing this mask? And then she's like,
I'm like, she's supposed to be a hero. God damn it. This is intercontinuity. I'm like, I started pulling a freaking, like one of those guys I used to yell at on the Spider-Man, like, or crawl space. Everyone's trying to be like, I can't believe this characterization of Felicia is blah 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 blah. I'm like, dude, like, what are you talking about?
Anyway, the milk bath was a bit much. Okay, can we just say?
Anyway, that's
on the nose.
Remember that we haven't been there yet, but I guess for me,
I do want to go back to this. I kind of object to the Marvel swimsuits thing because that at least didn't have the veneer of being serious. That was just, oh, hey, let's just put out this swimsuit issue for the sake of having fun.
And the thing is, I think people have embraced that specifically. I mean, DC's doing that again.
It's funny because like
people, I think some of the youth want that.
The Zoomer generation would love some of this. Speaking as a Zoomer, I would love for them to have another swimsuit edition.
Does nobody remember the Morbius bit in that swimsuit issue? Was like,
Morb Nation rise up.
It was It was like, oh,
it is indeed Morbin time.
It was very Morbin time. Right? Like,
just not Jared Leto.
Yeah. So I guess it could be a good time to kind of wrap this up.
Yeah.
I want to let me ask a question first.
Please.
All right. Yes, counselor.
Of the 5, would you say that 4 is kind of the outlier that doesn't necessarily fit the time period as much as maybe the other 4? Or what do you guys think?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about like the 5? Did they represent the time periods well? Is 4 maybe the one that's the weakest link in that respect?
That's a great question, because I'm sorry, Zach. I mean, I feel very strongly in this because I know what you're asking. And it's going to be a weird response. I think it represented the era well. It's just my least favorite issue of that series. I think it did a good job, with the exception of maybe Johnny. Maybe is not because I don't know if he was dating Alicia/Lyja at the time or whatever. Yeah. So I don't know exactly where that was in that era, but I will say that I think it was a good representation. It was a fine representation of the era. It was just, to me, just the way he wrote the story was my least favorite. Again, with the exception of like, I love Black Panther. What's up, Javi? Love you, the heart. Or El Corazon.
That's your fault for just now getting here.
Yeah, that's right. It's your fault.
You probably had no work, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I don't care if you
let the man work.
No, but I think if this answers your question, I think it represented it fine. It's just my least favorite of the 5.
Sure. So I think the first issue does a really good job of like early career Peter and Johnny, and that it's kind of a spiritual successor to what the little rivalry that Stan and Jack and Steve had kind of cooked up over those years. I think the second issue, a little bit of a romanticized version of the Ramita era when we talk about the Betty, Veronica, MJ, Gwen stuff. But I think that if you read it in a vacuum, it's fine. If you read it as like trying to fit it into continuity, your eyes start switching. I think the third
it's not that, to me. It's like, it's just weird, like that. Yeah. But you can fit it into anything. Like people want to really quick. People want to fit like every little detail into every like where exactly does Peter take a shit between issue 35 and then this Untold Tale by Kurt Busiek, and then that Dan Slott where Peter David tries to come in, and like it's like guys, let's not. It's not that linear. Okay, it's like
John Wilson. Is that you? Sorry.
Yeah. So, but you just have to roll with it a little bit. I mean, granted, like there are some contradictions you have to be aware of. That's more, I wouldn't say that's not a contradiction. I would say it's a very light contradiction, I would say. So issue 3, I think, does a decent job of Gwen being the floating head of guilt. I would agree with that.
And I'm glad they didn't do Saint Gwen, because I know that Saint Gwen isms were in the atmosphere at that point.
Oh God, this was around the time of Blue, and I just never mind. I just watched
one of the most overrated Spider-Man stories ever, by the way.
Oh, Spider-Man Blue?
No, yeah,
probably because of the art.
My man,
right, Paul? That's the only reason why you read that book is the art. That's the only reason you read that book. I love you, Jeff Lowe. All right, we digress. Stop. I really quickly. There's a couple things I want to hit up, and then I'll be done. If you could do me a quick favor, issue 3, that floating head of Gwen Tri-Skull. I think this. And also the page. This is great stuff. I love him talking to Gwen there. I think it's a great moment. Also the page where they're working on the Spider-Mobile Tri-Skull as well.
Yes.
This one.
Wait, no, hang on.
You're good. This one is not that one. That's not the page I do not like.
Did you upload
Did I give it to you?
It's up.
No.
It's up here, I think.
I'm sorry.
It's right here.
Where is it? Oh.
Yeah, thank you. This was a fantastic page. This was like, to me, when I want to talk about comic medium, and I think like when I tell people, like, people need to give not just superhero comics, comic books in general. Slott gets it. This is like, to me, what makes comics special. You have what, 6? You have establishing shot, them like talking. It's like very mundane, a lot of dialogue, and then like a real no backdrop, nothing behind Spider-Man, and talking about how like he lost his love. And it's like, it's a gut punch by one time you get to the bottom of this page. It's like you're kind of lured to like a lot of dialogue. Ugh. It's just, I freaking love comic books so much, because this page shows you why the medium, whether you're writing comics for superheroes, trolls eating monsters, or two lovers swirling, whatever,
so people can see it. Obviously, I don't know.
Great.
I don't know if we're going to put this as an audio edition or not, but if you're listening, this is a very audio or visual centric episode. So,
but no, I just want to say that this is, to me, an emphasis. Like, Dan Slott is a great comic writer, because of moments like this, he knows how to plot this and how to do it. And like, I think like Ty Templeton does a great job of being cinematic, if that's a way to say it, and emphasizing the emotion of the page, and have with what Dan Slott's talking about, the dialogue, but with the image of Spider-Man looking down. Oh, just chef's kiss. Love it. So, and last thing I'll add, throw up the 6-panel grid of Paste Pot Pete. This is why I think Dan Slott is a good writer for comics and for Marvel.
It's a Tom King grid.
It's a 9-panel. It's a classic 9-panel grid.
That's bad. So, yeah, I hate that. Oh, Dan, better than 9-panel. Shut the hell up. Anyway, not you, Tri School. But no, I think it's a great moment of like why Dan Slott gets like Marvel continuity. Like this is where we get the Paste Pot Pete turns into the Trapster. It's right here. And it's a throwaway. It's unnecessary to the story, but you know what? It works in the context of the era and of the character. And I thought it was fun. And this is a great example, I think, of what makes Dan Slott, I think, a fun writer for Marvel Comics or comic books in general. So as a whole, I think Dan Slott is a great writer. I always like Dan Slott. Hopefully I'll be saying that throughout the time. Maybe I'll be disagreeing with my own self later on. But to me, this series is worth checking out and reading. It was still fun to do. I didn't love it, but I still enjoyed myself.
And I liked this a lot. And this is going to be a rare thing for me, probably.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. Listen,
I get mind on fire.
I hate to do this live, but I have to go. My dog's flipping out, and so I might need to help out. So I apologize.
Let's wrap this. We want to just do the standard outro, wrap it up.
Sure. Yes. Do it. Yeah. Let's do it.
So let's throw the thing up there. The standard outro card. All right. Thanks for watching. If you are watching us live here on YouTube, I don't know if we're going to do this as an audio edition. If we are, give us that 5-star review. Let us know how we're doing and leave us that review. You can always find us on the social medias here. You can find us at Spideydude Radio. You can find at Comic Binge on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it these days. Facebook.com/Spideydude Network and Threads and Instagram. And then, of course, you can find us over on YouTube.com/Spideydude Radio Network and YouTube.com/Comic Binge. Yeah, I'm still on Threads. You can, if you want to leave a voicemail, if you like what we did in this discussion, leave us a voicemail. Give us that voicemail at 818-925-6631. And let us know how we're doing by leaving us those likes, those shares, those subscribes. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate everybody that's liked us over there. And, of course, Comic Binge has got 1,000+ subs. Congratulations to you, Paul. Woo! And so, Paul, tell us, everybody else, real quickly, where they can find this Comic Binge.
But you can find the Comic Binge on YouTube, obviously, also on Twitter and on Instagram. Just put in the Comic Binge. You'll see the logo. Please subscribe. Like this video. Subscribe to the Spideydude Experience. Go watch all our videos so we can get more watch hours. And this will be a lot of fun. This was a lot of fun, guys. I can't wait to do this again, honestly. This was fun.
Yeah, and of course, go over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Spideydude Network if you want to support this channel and all the stuff that we do here, part of the network. The names are up here on the screen. Thank you, guys, and check out our other great shows, too. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.